Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. The title of our webinar today is Maximizing the Impact of Sales Enablement with Content and Learning. This webinar is a joint effort between us here at MindTickle and Seismic. And today's hosts are going to be Jonathan Hines, the Director of Product Marketing at Seismic, and Daniel Cooperman, Director of Product Marketing at MindTickle. I'm going to give each one just a couple of seconds here to give a little bit of background about themselves before we get going a little further. So, Jonathan, will you give people a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt, and thanks for everybody for attending today. I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit more about this topic, as it's very near and dear to my heart. At Seismic, we help marketing teams create great sales assets so that sales can win deals faster. And we do that through a variety of different ways, but my job as a product marketing is to enable that sales team. And so I'm really excited to dive in a little bit deeper about my experience here, as well as what we've seen.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. This is Daniel Cooperman, Director of Product at MindTickle. I've been doing sales enablement since before it was even called sales enablement. I bet some on the line today are also veterans on the field. So it's a very interesting topic, and the challenges facing sales enablement professionals today are quite interesting. But I think now we have the technology to solve some of those challenges. And I'm very excited to be here with our friends at Seismic to talk about that today and give you guys some ideas on how to tackle that and move forward. So thanks, everyone, for attending.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Before I get into the agenda, just a little housekeeping here. We have muted everybody just so we have some clear lines for the presentation today. We will be accepting questions, so please feel free to write your questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar app. We could take them during the show if you think they're pretty pressing and right on topic of what somebody's talking about right now, or we do have time later on for a Q&A session, so whatever works best for you guys. We are recording today, so we will be able to send over recordings and slides to anybody who asks for it. And so the agenda for today's webinar is, first we're going to look at the new mandate for sales enablement. What's shaping changes in sales enablement, current challenges and opportunities for everybody, and then understanding the role of technology. Then we're going to dive into delivering successful sales enablement programs with a real-world look. So we're going to see how technology improves sales performance, the roadmap for successful sales enablement, metrics that will guide your journey, and then we'll have time for a Q&A session. And I think with that said, I think we can kick off the webinar, and I'll hand it off to the guys. So here we go.
Thank you, Matt. Again, my name is Jonathan Hines, Product Marketing Director at Seismic. Really excited to talk to you guys today about how content and training actually are very closely aligned and work together. Let's talk a little bit about our experience and what we hear buyers saying. The expectation for sales has risen significantly. When a seller calls me, I feel like they need to know me, they need to know my role, they need to know my company and my industry, and honestly, anything less, and I'll just move on to the next salesperson of the many that are hitting my inbox and calling me on my mobile. And the reality is that as business leaders, we're swamped. I mean, I know most people here are probably working, 6-7 days a week, definitely late into the nights just to keep pace. And it's hard to afford, 30 to even 60 minutes on a sales call where then I have to educate the seller, right? On top of that, there's multiple touch points across the buyer journey. There's hundreds of channels of information where I can learn and educate myself, and advertisements all over the place, and salespeople from all different technologies and services are on me on a regular basis. And the funny thing is that we know we have to play this game, right? It's part of how we develop our business, right? We need to supplement and enable our business with new software, new technology, new services to help us achieve our goals. But fundamentally, you have to come down to the question of, like, who do you trust? How do you decide who to have that conversation with, who to spend your time with?
Yeah, Jonathan, so guys, this is Daniel, and I think this is interesting, right? Because what this is also saying is there's about the gap, and it seems that there are two sides to the gap, right? One is how prepared is that salesperson to have a conversation with you, right? The buyer, the decision maker, and also what can they offer during that conversation in terms of not only like the solution, their technology that all the sales reps know fairly well, but what are the insights they can provide, right? How much they know about your pain and your challenges and your industries, and what in order to educate you to move towards the ideal scenario. So one of the things that I think is interesting is why is this happening, right? So can you also maybe share your thoughts about why sales reps have such a challenge on bridging the gap?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can just move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about that, where this isn't a witch hunt, right? So it's not sales' fault, right? Nobody's doing this purposely, right? It's honestly, I think, the hardest job in the world. And I personally could never do sales. I evangelize because I'm a product marketer, but I definitely couldn't go out and sell for a living. I'm honored to work alongside some incredible salespeople here at Seismic and also with MindTickle, but I know how hard it is. I can see the struggle on a regular basis, right? Because it's interesting when you really think about it a little bit, you reflect a little bit, like how many times have you actually encountered an amazing salesperson, right? You know, I personally, and I'm sure you guys do too, get pitched all the time, right? But I can only think of, you know, a handful of instances where, you know, they came into the meeting and they knew who I was. They understood my challenges. They were well prepared and have the right materials and information to advise me, to earn my trust. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody to trust so that we can make an educated decision, so that we can help our business, so we look great in front of our peers and our bosses. But the reality is, on the sales side, it's an incredibly hard job. They have to scramble to educate themselves. They have to, find the right sales asset for the right conversation at the right time. They're constantly rebuilding materials because the information that they have isn't suited to the situation that they're trying to work through. They have to quarterback company resources, all just to have one meeting, right? And that's only one of several meetings that it takes to close your average deal. The vast majority of their time is spent in prep work, and unfortunately, it's not enough time out in the field selling. Matt, if you could, there you go. Thank you. So why? What's happening, right? We all know this. We understand the technology changes that have occurred. As Daniel said, many of us are veterans on this call. I've been in this industry for 16 plus years, and originally, it was all about the brand, and so marketing teams use the power of the organization to message out to as many people as possible exactly what the company was about, like their brand messaging, and it was all about building awareness. Right, but then something changed. It wasn't enough, right? They started to draw interest, and they had to do something with those people that were interested. And so, lo and behold, demand generation was created, right? Marketing automation platforms helped us take that awareness, amplify it, and then qualify those people further to the point of consideration, right? So focusing the amount of people that we were having that conversation with and enhancing those conversations along their journey. But today it's different, right? Today the marketing teams and the sales teams are closer than they ever have been before. And even though it feels, at times like a struggle, if you're in sales or if you're marketing or sales enablement, the reality is that you're all focused on very similar goals, right? The organizations that you work for has aligned on, revenue and growth, productivity, some of the key metrics, sales and marketing efficiency, to ensure that alignment works. Because at the end of the day, it's now all about conversion. It's about taking that many conversation and driving it down to the one conversation that's going to make the difference. Matt, if you could just flip the next slide, please. And so what we've seen over time is that there is a need for another piece of software, right? Another service to help out. And that's because at the marketing level, we've been having this one-to-many conversation. We've been using marketing automation platforms to have broadcast our messages and enhance those leads, refine them till we have a good marketing qualified lead or set of leads that we can pass over to sales. And when sales gets those marketing qualified leads, they have them in their CRM systems, and they further refine those leads till they become opportunities, and then they get down to the point where they're just trying to reach the person, right? The buyer, right? And sure, of course, the influencers, but the buyer that makes the decision. Right? That's the goal of sales' responsibility of the CRM tools that they use, is to get to the one person. And so they win or they lose, unfortunately, sometimes. But let's say they win, because I want to be positive here. So they win, and so what? Where's the key learnings? How did we win? What content was used? How was training effective? Right? What elements went into that salesperson being able to close that deal? How did marketing know what content worked? How did they enhance those leads to get to the point where there was signature on a piece of paper? Right? And so the missing element has been the sales enablement for sales and marketing. Right? There's enablement for sales and marketing. And so Seismic and MindTickle together provide a pretty interesting combination where the right content can be delivered to sales at the right time so they can personalize it, along with the training to ensure that they understand how to use it, what it's for, how to apply it, right? And so that information can then funnel back through analytics to marketing so they can do better next time and essentially optimize that flow, right? So take those key learnings from the wins and the losses, apply them back to the top of the funnel, drive better qualified leads down back through the funnel so that sales has better opportunities, they're more trained for, they have better content for.
Cool. So from what you told us, Jonathan, there has been a clear change, right, in the way that companies are marketing to people, the way that buyers are actually going through their evaluation process. And there also needs to be a change now in how sales enablement is solving for that missing link or the changes are happening. And people on the line are probably familiar with this, but sales enablement has completely evolved from what was historically basically just a training function. And now there has been the pressure to really be more of a sales effectiveness element or component to it. And for you to get your sales enablement to the next level, so there are three things that we believe that you need to do, which we have them here on the screen. So the first item is basically talking about you have to prepare sellers to have those value-added conversations that the buyers are expecting of them. And this is not just simply having salespeople sit down for training, for example, but really making sure that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviors, like the triumvirate, if you will, to perform in the field. The second point that we have here is about enabling the sellers with the right information that they need at the right stage of the sales cycle. And long gone are the days of having the reps come in for a few weeks of training and then dumping on their desks those huge binders full of your marketing collateral and battle cards and everything, and hoping that they will remember the training and hoping they will actually use the right collateral at the right time. Because in today's environment, as Jonathan talked about, there needs to be some very, very specific training and content at those different stages to adapt to the different situations that buyers are encountering with the sellers. And finally, the third point there is when we talk now about the pace of change that is happening today in terms of how often your own products are released, and long gone are the days also of annual product releases. So most companies, especially technology SaaS companies, you might have a agile development environment in which you have every 6 weeks, every other month, you have new features being released. So how can you get your sales reps aware of all those new features? How can you update them on what's happening from a point, from everything the dynamics of the business without taking them out of their selling environment and wasting the time that they actually don't have today. And he talks about creating this culture that we call a culture of continuous learning, so that sellers are constantly honing their skills without impacting selling time. So if we go to the next slide, let's talk about some of the things here that we're going to present to you. There's always some constraints, right? It's not just like, okay, we all agree that this is a problem. We all agree that there must be a solution. But there are some constraints in terms of adopting the right solution and technology. So these are some of the items we always come across. And actually, let me ask you, Jonathan, is this something new to you, or what have you seen also out there in the market?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much exactly what we've seen with the companies that we work with. We talk about this as first priority problems, right? Making sure that they can find the right content, to store the right content in the right places, to deliver it at the right times in the right way, and then analyze it with analytics capabilities. Those are the biggest struggles with the vast majority of companies that we work with, and it's hard to solve, right? Because sales has a challenge of either A, working longer on the deck to really show value, or B, trying to get out there and have those face-to-face conversations on a regular basis. But what would be really interesting if we could I think we have some poll questions to ask the audience. I'd love to see what they think.
Perfect. So if you could all take a few seconds there and answer the poll that's going to be shown here on the screen. There you go. So what we're trying to assess here is, what is the biggest problem you are facing at your organization today? So it could be, for example, your salespeople, they can't find the content that they need, or maybe they do have the content, but they don't know how to use it when they find it. Might be also that there is no consistent processes related to the selling motion and how to use what and when to use it. Or maybe you are at a situation where you don't know what's working versus not working. So you kind of need to go back and do some analysis to see where exactly the sales cycle is being impacted, what is delaying deals, and is a problem related to content, is a problem related to training, or is another problem altogether, right? So let's wait a couple more seconds here to see what we got out of the poll.
And Daniel, these are always so interesting. I mean, as you've had many jobs over your career, and I have too, in these fields, you hope that a lot of this stuff is in place when you get into some of the businesses that you're working for, and then you kind of quickly realize that these processes aren't in place, that the right tools to analyze what's working, what isn't in place, that nobody can find the content, right? And it's kind of fun to build these out, but at the same time, it's hard, right? You spend the first year creating these frameworks, right, to help or try to help the sellers do more with less.
Are you guys able to see the results on your screen, or should I read them off?
Yep, there you go.
Got it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that findability, or sorry, they don't know how to use it once they find it is pretty low there. Finding the content is always one of our biggest challenges with the business that we work with. Daniel, I'm sure you guys have this too. You run into situations where there's hundreds of content repositories, places where sales can go get a piece of material or an asset. And because of that, there's no way to link all those systems together to just get some basic analytics on who's downloading that stuff and how it's being used. Daniel, what do you think about these results?
Yeah, I think this is also very consistent with what we see across the board. The last one there on 47% about I don't know what's working versus not is also not surprising. It's very complex, right? So when we look at sales, modern sales enablement, which is, like we said, more than training. It's not related to even talent acquisition or defining sales competencies, and then looking at sales cycles and what's actually blocking deals from being won or lost, and going back and analyzing the data about what exactly is happening. It's a tremendous challenge that companies have today. So these are very much in line with what we see out there.
I will say just one quick thing here that I find interesting is that, you know, as sales enablement leaders, as product marketers, as marketers, like we tend to pump out a lot of content, right? And I've always gotten to the point in my stage or my careers where, you know, you hit the critical mass point where you've produced enough baseline materials, and then you realize that unless they know how to use it, right, unless they know how to speak to it, unless there's instruction, some training to go alongside it, that it's just worthless, right? And so I do want to talk about that point a little bit more, just because I think it's pretty critical in my experience. But let's keep on moving along. This is interesting results.
Yeah, for sure. So if we go back now to the deck, there's a couple more things to cover. Perfect. And let's go now to the next slide. Awesome. So here's what we like to do, and this is going to be fairly fast because we all recognize the problems, especially based on the polls, but let's think about the typical situation, right, to illustrate what we're talking about. So meet Peter, for example, a sales rep here on the screen, and when Peter has a call with a prospect, what does he need to do? Well, if Peter is like those reps I've met over my career, he's probably going to wait until 30 minutes before the call, and then he's going to start getting ready for the call. He's going to go through something like this that we have. First, he needs to look for the sales deck that he needs to use, and 9 out of 10 cases, he'll just use whatever deck he used last time, and maybe he's going to customize that a bit. But the problem then becomes, what if this new prospect might be on a new industry he's not familiar with? Or what if there has been new introduction of a new feature, new capability into the solution that Peter is selling, and he might have to get a quick refresher on how exactly to pitch that, or that might actually have a new competitive information, and he knows that prospect is also evaluating someone else. So how can he quickly, without screwing up the deck, for the lack of a better term, go through this and present the solution that's adequate to that specific selling situation? So suffice to say that this is far from a perfect process, and I think, Jonathan, you probably have seen this also in the past. So you have any comments?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on my history. I worked for Verizon Wireless for almost 13 years, and I was dealing with 29,000 sales reps spread across 2,000 stores and 29 customer service centers. And so being able to communicate with them effectively and have the right content in their hands was a constant challenge. But what I find interesting is always the Hail Mary, right, email that goes out, right? So you see, somebody send out, one of the salespeople send out the email to the mass distribution list, be like, hey, have you ever seen this, or where's the latest deck, or how can I get this? It's painful to see, but honestly, it's our problem to fix, right? It's our responsibility to enable them, and it's not that they don't want it. It's not that they're not trying. It's that we haven't given them the tools to do so.
Perfect. So let's now take a look at the other side of the table, which is sales enablement, right? So the Mary here, for example, sales enablement manager, what is she scratching her head about now is thinking about those things that are probably familiar to most of you on the line today, which is that training webinar, for example, that a product management team has put together was very well attended. People all across all the offices logged on, but she knows that most of those sales reps, after the first 5 to 10 minutes, started checking email, right? So do they actually remember anything? Do they actually recognize some of the things they can apply to the prospects they're talking about today. The other question is that she might have is new pitch that was rolled out a few weeks ago. So how can she evaluate whether the reps are using the new marketing collateral, the new sales deck, they're pitching the right message, and do they even open that email, right? This is some of the things that we see all the time. And I bet this is also not news to you, Jonathan.
No, it's definitely not news to me, and it's a very funny but painful situation. So it's not really that funny, but we've all experienced it, and so you kind of got to giggle a little bit. But I would say like number 3 is probably the one I hear the most, where the question comes up: is it the right collateral? Is it the right piece for this conversation? Because there's no ability to apply instructions or context to those briefs or product slicks or one pagers or decks or whatever the piece of content may be that you're creating. And then, even still, after you inform them and you tell them how to use it, sometimes it's tough because they repeat the same content again and again, right? Remember, they're pitching 3, 4, 5 times a day. If they're inside reps, it's plenty more than that, right? And so they just like anybody else naturally get stuck into ways to talk about things. And so getting them out of that paradigm, getting out of that talk track, and giving them more information and training and work with them is absolutely critical. It's not just being able to deliver a slide and quick email about how to use it. It's really having the right tools in place to reinforce training for that content and give it some context.
Yeah, no, this is perfect. I experienced that a lot as well. And what I think is also that happens is if we look at the number 4 there, is that one-on-one that now sales enablement needs to have with the sales leader. So as Mary sits down with her VP of sales, for example, the question that sales enablement needs to answer is what are the priorities for enabling the team? What actually is going to cause the biggest impact in terms of ability to accelerate deals, ability to win more competitive situations, and also what are the exact gaps that enablement is identifying when it comes to sales competencies, and how can that gap be basically reduced? And without the analytics around that, without the information, Mary is basically just have a blank stare on her face, and as the VP is asking her, like, okay, what should we do and why should we do it? This is actually the impact that enablement can provide. When you come down for that conversation with VPs of sales and other executives, and you're able to demonstrate that you actually know where the gaps are and how to close those gaps.
So let's talk a little bit about like kind of ideal scenario, what it means to really fix these. And it's funny, I have had plenty of jobs where I wish somebody would give me a clear responsibility list, because product management, product marketing, sales enablement, it becomes, and even sales operations becomes a lot of a catch-all, right? And you tend to have to take on a lot of different responsibilities, some way outside your job list, right? But that's because we're critical to the business, right? It's important for us to enable the rest of the teams to better work together, to align on common goals, to leverage the right tools, resources, so that you can achieve them together, right? And so when it really drilled down to the essence of sales enablement, it's really about setting up the framework, right? So sales can be successful, and that's the administrative function. And I know that sounds like an annoying term, but the reality is it's the most critical, right? To ensure that you've got the right resources in place across the teams that you're working with, and the right framework, so that they can get their job done more effectively, more efficiently, right? The right training in place to help provide context to all the different things that are going on with the business at the same time. New product launches, new competitive messaging, new decks, new content, right? All these different things that sales has to absorb quickly, and so they can have better conversations with people they're trying to sell to. And then last but not least, of course, a place to learn, right? To educate themselves on the latest news and happenings. And when that's done right, then sales is easily able to access the right assets. They know how to use them, and the results are awesome, right? So the results are they're able to accelerate deals, they're able to have a better deal impact, the teams become more efficient together. And so what you can see as a result at a high level is, and there's a bunch of different things here, but it's better team collaboration, your communication across the organization is improved, there's increased efficiency, so we're able to get stuff done faster, right? Your improved effectiveness, when you do that stuff, it has a better impact, a bigger impact. You have more time to think through the strategic items and fill those gaps, like Daniel said, with the sales VPs to really help strengthen the organization that you're supporting. And then sales is, out there closing deals left and right. It's exactly what we want. We want them, ringing the gong and sending out the win emails or whatever the celebration, method is at your company. Those are things that we love to see, that excites us, especially when we're part of those. The reality is, like, we're critical to those deals. We're critical to their support. And when we do help, it has a significant impact to the business. Let's actually talk a little bit about that in the next slide. So of course, there's the personal benefits. There's to yourself and the counterparts in sales that you work with. But from a business perspective, it is significant. What we see across the companies that we work with is there's a stage of effects. So first things first is you have increased efficiency across the business, and that means that people can find stuff. It's all in one place to access. The sales teams, when they pull that data, when they pull those assets, they know how to use it because they've had the right training in place in order to make that happen, right? Then next is effectiveness, right? So when I do all those things, I can have a bigger impact on the business. And then last but not least, when you combine efficiency and effectiveness, you have a higher focus on commercial outcomes for the business, right? So new and organic revenue growth driven by more productive teams, right? And effectiveness because they have the right tools and training in place to be successful.
Yeah, and this is interesting because for those of you looking to build your business case, for example, and we're going to show you guys what this might look like, right, from a tools perspective. But as you're thinking about getting people on board to why should we change what we're doing, and sales enablement is, for the lack of a better term, is a change management job as well, because in a lot of cases you're identifying things that you need to do to improve, and you need to get approval from different parts of the organization. And as you're paying attention to those slides, this is basically helping you build the proposal or the business case you need. And at the end, we're also going to show you some of the numbers and the results we have seen from our own customers as benchmarks for what might be the impact or the expected impact for making those changes. One thing that is important also when we look at impact, and sometimes is not taken too much into consideration, is when it comes to the improve in morale along the sales team. And the feeling that when you do things like this, that a sales rep will realize that the organization is taking this into consideration. And when you're reducing the time that a sales rep takes to find content, when you're giving them the right training, the right skills to sell, what we have seen is attrition rates among the sales team decreases significantly. And if you want to grow the organization and you have new people you're hiring, improving the morale and how the sales are perceived by internally is extremely important as well, and it's a great impact that's going to reflect in the bottom line. So why now not? Yeah, let's go for not a poll question. So if you guys could take a moment to just tell us which ones of those are top of mind for you. Is it maybe onboarding new sales reps? is implementing something related to continuous training and education, is maybe competitive info, right? Or content training and certification for the sales team. So take a moment there, please, and let us know what is top of mind for you.
These are all tough problems to solve. This is basically your day one introduction to a business sometimes, right, Daniel? It's like, hey, Daniel, thanks for joining MindTickle. Here is your list of to-dos this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Jonathan, I think there needs to be another option for all of the above, right?
Yeah, really. Oh, and sprinkle in some go-to-market too, right?
Right, right. And by the way, you don't have a bigger budget and you don't have a bigger team. Just go ahead and do it.
It's funny how it just screams for the need of a platform. Like you start to realize to do this stuff in concert and have an effect, it's almost impossible without a platform in place or a service in place. This is pretty cool. Continuous training and education. That's awesome to see that it's top of mind.
Yeah. So it's not new to me. Is actually a lot of people, when we're talking to them, this is one of the key things that they're saying is like, it's fine that we're tackling onboarding and everything, but those reps that have been here for a few years now, and they consider themselves veterans in the field. How can we get them to continue hone what they know and get that information from the field back to them, continue training them without actually having them spend time, right, on that old school like sales training approach, and just get them like rapid responses when they need it.
Cool. Let's talk about how we do it. I think that's let's go through this. I think this is the fun part, right? So, Matt, if we go to slide 18 and just kind of get into the weeds a little bit. What I want to talk about here is, sorry, the next slide. There you go. What we call basically just-in-time training or content and training. And so this is pretty cool. With MindTickle and Seismic combined, you essentially, in your CRM system that sales is accessing every single minute of every single day, literally, they can easily drop the right content that's tied to the right opportunity and stage, persona, product line of the business. So it's delivered with intelligence, content delivered with intelligence, but then also it's packaged combined with training so that not only they need a quick refresher, right, on that content, they have access to it. And so it's about giving them the content they need exactly when they need it, the right sales stage, or based on the circumstances identified through your CRM platform, but then coupling the content right with it so they can get a quick refresher. Again, making it super easy for them to either read the battle card or get the quick latest training on the product that they're going to be talking to their prospects about. And so this is really about giving them the tools and the resources to have a great conversation in the platforms that they already use, not making them go to, like Daniel said, not making them go to a 3-day session off-site and use a valuable sales time. It's literally right where they're at. And the next one is pretty cool too. So the ability to actually lock content until knowledge certification has been taken, right? And so, again, having that ability to deliver intelligent content to the salespeople in their CRM tool, Salesforce, Dynamics, whatever, at the right stage and opportunity for them, but then lock it so that they're required to take the training course before they can access the content. So, hey, thanks, Bob. You really want access to the latest and greatest pitch deck? Well, you need to learn how to use it first, right? And so instead of, again, dragging people to a 3-day offsite on how to use the pitch deck, right, being able to instantly give that information to them right at their fingertips exactly when they need it is an awesome capability that can kind of magnify your your ability to train and educate across your sales team. We also have the capability together with MindTickle to combine content and training. So what you're seeing here is a landing page that sales go to on a daily basis. And the reality is that the vast majority of content, we know this from working with hundreds of companies and having analytics on all the content that they use. The vast majority of content that's used is actually only a small minority of the content that's in the total library. And so, 80 to 90% of content is generally unused, but it's unused for good reason. It's not the stuff that closes deals. It's the 10 to 20% that does. And so, what you're seeing here is that 10 to 20%. Right? It's right there in your face. Right? The analogy I always use here is, I never lose my keys, my car keys, because every time I enter my apartment, there's a small bowl right next to the door. I put my keys in there. When I leave the apartment, I grab my keys and bowl. Never lose my keys in the apartment ever, right? Unless my 2-year-old takes them, and that's a whole different story. But that way, the keys are always in the same place every day, just like the content that I need every single day is in the same location. And so this capability allows you to have content as well as training in the place that sales goes every single day. Now, if they are looking for something on a more occasional basis, or they're trying to recall something that they need every so often, that's what search is for, right? Search is for, hey, I think I remember, or there was something a couple weeks ago, right? The every so often usage, right? That's absolutely what search is for, and it's a super powerful tool. But being able to combine training and content together in the same location really helps to reinforce both of the items. And then this next slide is pretty cool. So within the platform, what we can do is, and I do this for my pitch deck, right? So as I roll out my pitch deck to the sales team, we record people from across the business, basically pitching slides, right? And I can attach those instructions, that training, to all the pieces of content, as many of those videos or Word documents or even just text that I want, just giving them instant access to training when they're reviewing the content. And so, in my pitch deck as example that I built out for sales, there's 10 videos, each about minute, 2 minutes long, that they can quickly press play and hear exactly how to pitch individual slides in that deck. And then you can apply that to product slicks or briefs or any form of content that you want. But that capability to extract that content or the training content from MindTickle and put it into the Seismic platform to really enhance the content, give it context with training, is an incredible capability. So we alluded to this a little bit before, so I'm going to touch a little bit on some of our metrics that we're very, very proud of. Our focus is really about productivity to sales level, obviously marketing efficiency, but then also ensuring that there's new and existing revenue growth in business. And so what we've seen with working with businesses is that on the sales side, there's 85% gain in sales productivity, and then a 50% revenue gain from new and existing customers. And that comes from analysis of several different customers across an extended period of time. Not just your 1 or 2 case studies, it's multiple added together. And so we're very proud to see this and work with our customers to achieve these goals.
Yeah, and we see something similar on our side, which customers keep telling us about. A reduction in ramp time, right? It is one of the holy grails when you look at new sales reps and onboarding, and how you can accelerate the time to productivity, for example. And the other thing that is, when you look at a continuous learning and enablement culture, is how can you increase the effectiveness of sales reps, and in a lot of cases that translates into pipeline win rates, right, or especially competitive win rates, and the size of deals they're increasing as well. So as you are building your own business case for change in your own organizations, think about the metrics that you guys want to tackle, right? And we give you here some examples of what we have seen and you can expect as well.
Cool. I think that caps it, right? That's it was a good session, Daniel. I really had fun today. I think a couple of key points here just to talk about that. Just when you get a moment today or tomorrow, like go thank sales for working as hard as they do. It's a really tough job, and I've always been really proud to be very close to sales. Although I'm generally in the marketing organization, sometimes product organizations, but it's a hard job. That said, so is ours, right? Our job as enablement leaders is difficult, right? We have to take our knowledge or expertise and we have to find a way to multiply that value across the organization, right? So our efforts can be multiplied. So if I, put in 200 hours of work, that just saved, 3,000 hours of work from all the sales teams combined, right? So it's a labor of love, definitely, but extremely important to the business.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Jonathan. And sales enablement, I think, is today performing a very important function related to creating the link between all the departments that vie for sales attention in an organization, like marketing, product marketing, and really helping to streamline interaction with sales. So enablement leaders need to look at how to create this culture of continuous learning. So your organization can become agile and can adapt to all the changes happening in the marketplace. But of course, for this to happen, in many cases, you may have to relook at the technology that you have today. So we showed you today in this webinar some ways to do that, and we also showed you kind of a sneak peek of MindTickle and Seismic working together as one possibility. But regardless of the technology platform that you choose, my recommendation is also just make sure that it's aligned with what is your vision for sales enablement at your own organization, and make sure that the platform that you choose or combination of platforms is actually going to help you move the needle, right? Going back to the metrics that you want to impact and looking at it not just from what is a problem you need to solve today, but as you look at the list, and we know the list is endless, but think about what is a solution that can help you not just today, but it's going to help, it's going to grow with you and help you tackle all of those issues so you can actually provide the strategic insight, the change management that is required today from sales enablement at organizations of any size. That's my also key takeaway from this. So thanks, Jonathan, for helping us with the webinar, and thank you everyone for attending. So maybe now we can jump into the Q&A side.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. That was super helpful and super interesting. I think we've covered a lot of great ground today. So we have a couple of questions that came in while you guys were talking, and definitely everybody in the audience, please feel free to write in any questions you may have, because the guys have some time here that they could answer any questions you have. So one of the first questions that came in was kind of dealing with the front half of the webinar when we were talking about the problems that people face, the buyers and the sellers face. And I guess it's more on the organizational side here. If you see the problems, what are the first steps you should take?
Call 911? No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, definitely the first problem, the first sign of problems is always a good start to grab some of the key sales leadership together and validate. The reality is that everybody's got problems storing content, and everybody's got problems finding content. Everybody's got problems delivering content. Everybody's got problems analyzing content and sales assets. So there's probably others that have had experience in this space that have also seen those challenges. But it's also just nice to get the various perspectives, right? Sales enablement is the bridge, right, between many organizations, and so pulling in your key stakeholders and trying to find out what truly is some of the problems is, I think, definitely the first step. Daniel, what do you think? What do you guys say?
Yeah, no, I think it's in line with what you're saying, Jonathan. And oftentimes you have to break down what the problem is into multiple categories, right? You have a people problem, you have a technology problem, you have just the basic sales motion problem or processes. So really putting your different hats, right, and looking at that problem, what that means for the different areas of sales, I think is going to be important. One of the things that we sometimes see our own customers doing is trying to look at it and do an assessment of where the problem lies. So is it a problem related to content? Is it a problem related to knowledge, right? Is it a problem related to even skills of the sales reps? So there are different ways that you can do a baseline assessment, for example, and understand where the problem lies. And we have companies using MindTickle for example, as the first point in let's do a full assessment of sales capabilities, sales skills, and the motions, so we have a clear picture of what to tackle first.
Awesome. Looks like the next question kind of has to deal with the difficulty of dealing with all these problems. So how hard is it to begin implementing changes and see quick wins?
Dan, you want to take the first round of that from sales readiness, and then I'll go into sales enablement?
Yeah, sure thing. So from our side, on the MindTickle side, implementation is actually pretty simple. It's a snap, and you can get up and running in a matter of days or weeks. It all depends on, as we go back to the problem, right? What exactly are you trying to solve? So if you're looking at, for example, on that continuous learning experience or culture you guys want to create in your own organizations, that can be as simple as putting together a process and enabling the reps to gain access from their mobile devices, for example, to the latest content or the latest training or the latest pitch. And that can be done fairly easily. Now, what I typically recommend people to do is don't think about trying to solve all of those issues or tackling like moving the mountain, right, at one shot, because you don't want to get into a situation where you spend months and months on that perfect implementation only to realize that things have moved on. So break it down into what are the different components, different elements you want to tackle, and go for quick wins. So a quick win that we see a lot of people doing, for example, is a sales pitch, training, or certification. And in a couple of days, roll that out, get all your sales reps or a portion of them going through a role play exercise in MindTickle, for example, video role play or different types of role plays that we provide, and immediately you're going to get that feedback, and you know what you need to fix, or you already trained them on that. Or the very next product release that you have, instead of in terms of let's spend a few hours going through that, you can also use micro-learning through MindTickle and immediately send out like bite-sized information, training and certification to reps' mobile devices or through Salesforce.com, for example. So it's very quick to implement, and just break it down into manageable components, and you're going to see those quick wins. And the benefit of that, just to finalize just this thought process, is you will have now real results to show back to sales management on what is the improvement that sales enablement is actually making without having to wait at the end of the quarter to then have that tough conversation. But what are your thoughts, Jonathan?
Yeah, very similar. So it all does depend on the size of the business. You know, we have a fast start implementation program that gets most businesses up and running within 30 days, if not much shorter than that. But we also work with enterprise businesses like HP. There's 17,000 reps there. It's a little bit of a different story, and we got them up running in about 4 months. But 17,000 reps. There's 1,000+ data repositories. There's 100 newsletters that we need to work through. But even then, getting some quick wins, like Daniel said, is critical. And so understanding what's in your current content inventory, we can do very quickly. From there, how it's being used, we can do very quickly, right? And then making sure that the top pieces of content, the most important pieces that are going to impact your sales cycle, are right front and center to your sales team, so they can quickly find or access them and do something with them, send along to prospect or personalize them. those things can be implemented very, very, very quickly, regardless of your business size. But it's like anything, it's a long-term partnership that we're looking to achieve because there's additional benefits as the technology grows and adoption increases.
Great, thanks guys. And it looks like we have time for maybe one more quick question here. A little bit of a general one, but I'm sure you guys have some insight based on everything you talked about today. How do you get sellers to change old habits?
That might be the hardest question of them all. I think what it boils down to is providing value. And if you're able to, bring, fresh perspective and content and training to the table that really shows immediate impacts to them, then they will follow you to the end of the earth. And again, like I said, I'm very honored to work with an incredible sales team here and also with MindTickle. That's, that is amazing to work with because Daniel and I have been able to deliver that value to them, and they've recognized it, through the years and quickly, and so they trust, right? And that's super critical to a long-standing and lasting and positive relationship. And so that's really what it takes to change behavior. It takes building that trust by working hard and delivering value to them. That's going to impact the way that they're able to sell to their businesses, to the buyers.
Yeah, I think you said it all, Jonathan. I completely agree with you, and I think part of the change as in sales enablement is also making sure you listen very closely to what your salespeople are telling you, what is working, what is not working, and if they were to change, get their recommendations as well. So you also know how to prioritize and what they feel like is going to create impact. So there's a balance there of what you want to do, what they are suggesting you do, and coming up with that balanced approach. So they feel like they've been listened to and that something is happening. So nothing better than having them come to you with those suggestions, and you're listening and implementing them.
Great, thanks guys. I think that'll about wrap it up here. We're about against the 3 o'clock wall. So first off, I just want to thank you, Jonathan and Daniel, for taking time out of your busy days in which you spend time making sellers' lives easier. And again, I want to thank everybody in the audience for attending. We really hope that this was informative and helpful for everyone. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. If you want a recording of the webinar, if you want a copy of the slides, we're happy to provide those. And from all of us here at MindTickle and Seismic, we'd like to say thank you for attending, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel.